Whispers of the unthinkable are wafting through the Asian-Pacific region. War between China and Japan over a small cluster of resource-rich islands in the East China Sea claimed by China, Diaoyu, and Japan, Senkaku. In September, the dispute quickly came to a boil, fueled by nationalism and the memory of Japan's brutal occupation of China during World War II. Enraged Chinese crowds filled the streets. They targeted owners of Japanese cars and launched a massive boycott of Japanese products, sending a debilitating gut punch to Japan's still struggling economy. In November, the Wall Street Journal Live reported that the boycott had cost Japanese companies billions of dollars. Since then, both nations have flexed their military muscle. In December, Japan scrambled jet fighters to respond to a Chinese plane flying over the islands. Although no shots were fired, such dangerous cat-and-mouse confrontations are likely to continue. Should the crisis worsen from its current status to, say, missiles launch and a ship sunk or an airplane knocked out of the sky, the United States will be forced to choose between backing a longtime ally, Japan, and supporting a nation more central to our economic health, China. In terms of economics, China has the clear bottom line edge, serving as America's biggest lender. As of September, China's holdings in U.S. securities, $1.73 trillion, topped the global list of creditors. In terms of trade, the most significant U.S. relationship in the Asia-Pacific region is with China. According to the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative, the export of U.S. goods to China amounted to $104 billion in 2011, while exports to Japan over the same period were $66.2 billion. Then there's extensive outsourcing by American companies, which ties the economies of China and the U.S. even closer. A case in point is Apple, which designs its iPhone and other products in the U.S., but has them assembled in China's massive Foxconn City facility. All of this could be put at risk if the U.S. sided with Japan in the current dispute, and the Chinese retaliated. A boycott would obviously harm American companies that ship agricultural products as well as cars and other finished goods to the Chinese market. Less clear is whether Chinese anger would extend to U.S. firms such as Apple, which have deeper Chinese economic roots. There's also the possibility that China, to punish the U.S., could sell off its stash of U.S. securities, a move that would devalue the dollar. It's possible, but not likely, at least according to a December report by the Congressional Research Service. Among other consequences, such a sale could diminish the value of the securities and lead to large losses for China. In November, the U.S. Senate unanimously approved an amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act, recognizing Japan's administration of the Senkakus and opposing the use of force. The Japanese cheered and the Chinese howled. But the provocative sentiment expressed in the amendment should be no surprise. In 2011, President Obama announced the major foreign policy shift. He declared that the Asia-Pacific region, which generates approximately 55% of the world GDP and about 44% of world trade, would be a top U.S. priority. The declaration was couched in normal and nuanced diplomatic niceties. However, China and the other nations of the region weren't fooled. For the United States, China is a classic frenemy, an economic partner, a rival, and a potential enemy that has upgraded its military capacity and used it to reinforce its claim to other disputed islands in the South China Sea. More importantly, the U.S. and Japan, which is home to ships of the powerful U.S. 7th Fleet, are bound together by a mutual defense treaty, which commits the U.S. to defend its longtime ally. U.S. failure to support Japan would undermine U.S. credibility, not just in Japan, but throughout this strategically important region. It could also prompt the Japanese to scrap their anti-war constitution, adopted after the U.S. firebombing of Japanese cities and the atomic devastation of Hiroshima and Nagasaki during World War II, and commit their deep pool of technological skills and talent to a single goal, a massive rearmament program that could include nuclear weapons. No one doubts that the Japanese have the capacity to easily become a world-class military power, an outcome no rational person wants to see. Should a shooting war erupt, The U.S. will side with Japan, despite the nightmarish economic scenarios that would follow. The challenge facing U.S. officials and diplomats in 2013 is to help China and Japan find a face-saving way to keep the dispute from getting that far.